right, guys, welcome back to another episode at Right Now Powder Coating YouTube channel. Today, I've got Dean with Steelhead on. This is our first interview, actually, with someone who helps out us powder coaters, but isn't necessarily one of us or in the industry, so to speak. But Dean, thank you for making time and coming on.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, appreciate it. Give us a little rundown of your background, what you do at Steelhead, how long you've been there, and then a little bit on Steelhead itself, where you guys, when you started, what you started in, and then what you guys offer.
Yeah, so my name is Dean. I work out of our Minnesota office, and currently, I guess I was a co-founder of the company, still a co-founder, and currently the chief revenue officer of Steelhead Technologies. So we've been growing quite a bit. We started this journey 3 years ago. So 3 years ago was actually in January of 2021. So right during COVID, there was a metal finishing shop actually in Ontario, Canada. And what they said to us, so our background is, my background's in mechanical engineering, kind of grew up in Minnesota, worked at GM, and worked in kind of corporate America for a while. And then my cousin Jeff and I just wanted to do our own thing. And we were selling some automation equipment into job shops. And there's a shop in Ontario, Canada. And what they said is like, this is cool, hardware, you can automate some and moving some parts through some pre-treatment and moving some parts through some plating and anodizing batches. But they're like, but that only solves one little piece of the puzzle. And the puzzle is we have blasting, we have masking, we have racking, we have many different types of finishes. We got the ovens, we got inspection, we have packaging, and we have so many jobs here. It's so hard to find out like where the jobs are,
Right.
Who's working on what. Yep. Yeah, what needs to get shipped today, right? What needs to be shipped tomorrow? And our leadership team, the smartest people in our building, aren't focused on like maximizing growth or what's our 1 year, 2 year, 3 year plan, and then how are we getting there, like doing like high level strategy. Our leadership team is running around looking for parts, looking for paper, saying, hey, ship this today, right? Yeah. Marking hot on the work order, get it through. Right. And they just went on and on for like an hour about like, there's nothing, like we've been looking for something laser focused on this industry. And making this high mix, high job count, kind of end of the production chain, if you will, making this specific use case easy to grow because it's so hard. And then my cousin Jeff and I were like, yeah, that sounds hard. And it makes sense. It kind of makes sense why people have overlooked this industry for so long. Because if you go into fabrication or if you go into assemblies or CNC shops, you'll find that there's so many of them. And the industry is so big that there actually is great software for that. And there's software that's been around for a long time for that. And this industry, nobody cares about. And they're like, hey, if you guys build it for us, you can sell it to everybody. So like that was kind of like that was the starting of it. And then it took us about a year to get even anything sellable. And we actually started with a company called Wildwood Coatings they have like a 3 or 4 man operation, batch powder coater in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Okay, so you started with a really small company because I think I talked to you guys, and I don't remember the exact time, but it was probably when you guys first started because we're a small operation, 3-4 people. I'm actually 4 now, but we were having trouble, everyone being on that same page. And that's when I started looking, and you guys were the first ones that popped up. So it seemed like you worked only in big production facilities, and we can get into that a little later when it's like who you serve and all that. But if you want to go ahead.
Yeah. So then we started, this was in the first year, our first beta customer, Wildwood Coatings. The guy's name was Brady Beckela and Isaiah Beckela, brothers that owned it. And they took a chance on us, like, hey, we're willing to take the bumps, take the bruises, learn together, grow together. And for that, we're forever grateful for them and kind of prove out like, hey, we can actually solve this problem, make this environment easy to grow, easy to scale, easy to run. And that without them, we wouldn't be here today. So like we kind of started around like a custom coater, if you will. Yeah. And then from there grew into bigger and bigger batch powder coating shops. And I think when we talked to you, maybe it was a year ago, I would say certainly our company has found a sweet spot as far as like where we've had the most growth in probably like the 20 to 30 or 20 to 50 headcount region. That's the majority of our customer base. And it's not like, it wasn't like preordained or predestined, but it's what we found is like as a company at the time was our most affordable, profitable, I guess, product market fit in terms of, hey, we have the software and it takes X amount of resources to build it and deploy it and to support it. And this profile of company can, afford to pay what we need to serve it. So,
and they're definitely going to be able to put it to use. Probably, at least at the beginning, a lot more efficiently than a small company might. But
yeah, and really, it is and we want to. Our goal is to take over the entire industry, coast to coast, north to south, U.S. and Canada, and run it. And the custom coders aren't like it's not like something that we've ignored. It's like, hey, we can't right now. We're not efficient there. Yeah. And it's almost like a business decision even for you, Dan. I'm sure you face. It's like, do I do the custom wheels or the one-off jobs, or do I focus on more commercial work, right?
Yep.
And it's something that has pros and cons, right? There's a lot of one-off stuff coming in, but the commercial parts, one customer comes back many times. And for us, for our business at the time, what made sense is like, hey, let's do the commercial work now because it's here and there's a lot of people wanting it. And we'll come back once we get our company very efficient at, acquiring, deploying, training, onboarding, supporting customers. Then we can afford to reduce. So our goal is to reduce our min lot cost. And we have a few coming in now with like in the 5 headcount range, in the 6 headcount range, 7 headcount range. And then if we can afford to be efficient there, lower our price, because truly that is the backbone of the nation. If you look at the market itself, majority of the companies are under 10 headcount. Just is what it is. So we want to get there. We just need to make sure that, we need to be in business for 50 years, right? So if we do anything that's just like right now, powder coating, if you do wheels and you're not profitable at doing wheels, well, it's going to hurt your company and your customers long term.
Yep. No, that makes total sense. That you would have to focus where you can, get that revenue coming in, and then that'll allow you a little more R&D time to figure out how to, work with different, even bigger companies too, but then even smaller companies to make it work for everybody. So I did see, I don't know if you have announced it or not, but I got an email from you guys, like from your marketing team, about a new program for smaller shops that kind of looked like.
Yeah, so we're calling it internally our rooftops campaign. Like we want every rooftop in America. And this is something that we're testing to see like, hey, let's almost do the limbo on our pricing and go as low as we can and see if we can use software to deploy it as fast as possible. Because what we largely do is ERPs, if you talk in the industry, you'll hear, everybody knows somebody that says, hey, ERP, those things are a nightmare, right? Changing them is a nightmare. Getting them set up is a nightmare. So what we've done is we have a team of deployment engineers, and their job is to understand your plant, understand your processes, how you do your business, how you quote, how you schedule, how you expedite, how you invoice, and then build a digital twin inside of Steelhead. Write any sort of custom code. So like say, for example, Dan, you have like, hey, if I enter a job today and it's due tomorrow, at right now powder coating that says, hey, this is an expedite. We're going to auto tag it as an expedite and then mark it up 50% because we don't do next day jobs for free. And that's a good revenue stream for our customers, but that takes ability for a deployment engineer to understand that reality and then code it into Steelhead, because every little task that we can automate helps you guys scale.
Yeah. Why don't you walk us through exactly what the product is? Because not everyone on here is going to know right away.
Great.
So let's just take like me, for example. I've kind of gone through it with you, but let's say I'm, right now powder coating just reached out to you guys, sent you an email, and we're looking for help getting a little bit more organized. So what's your whole process through the whole onboarding, getting the customer set up and all that kind of thing look like?
Yeah, it's a great question, Dan. So what Steelhead does is Steelhead is a tool, a software tool to help you organize, track, and grow your business. So each facet of a powder coating shop should be inspected, monitored, tracked in order to be improved, right? So what that touches for our customers, or where that mostly resides for our customers, is it starts off in quoting. So, and I guess to take a step back, at the highest level, a business is your machine, right? It's a profit machine. And the only way to improve a profit machine is to know what's happening. So as you guys are today, I think I saw you guys have 4 employees today.
Yep.
And if you're looking to become more of a production coder in the future, well, you need to make the machine faster or more efficient, or just apply more resources to it, put more gas in, and then don't become less efficient, right? So you need to be able to manage more people with the same amount of resources. So in Steelhead, kind of our perspective on the world is that everybody, there's 2 ways to run a shop. You can run it verbally, or you can use systems or processes to communicate for you. And we like software as the ultimate form of communication and the ultimate form of kind of reporting or analytics in regards to each operation, where it's successful, where it's not successful, because it's pretty hard. I mean, we've had customers that have been on the platform for 2 years. And I just got a call actually last night, and I had an owner, he's been running the shop for 10 years, say, hey, Dean, this we just found out our blast media, it's taken 30% of our surface area of our plants, but it's only 12% of our revenue. And also high temp paint is a very actually high margin, but the cost of the high temp paint is very high too. So it tweaks the margin here. So we made a couple adjustments and looking forward to how this is going to improve our profitability in the future.
Are you making adjustments? So they're telling you, like, here's what we've learned, like probably from your software, helping them see the numbers and the data. And then you're tweaking the recipe within your software so that they're charging different amounts now?
Okay. Correct. Yep, we can help them through that. And they actually did it then. At this point, they've been on the platform for 2 years, so they actually did it themselves. But they're more just, I mean, we're pretty good friends with all of our customers.
Yeah.
Because it becomes personal. It is business, but it becomes personal over time. And yeah, he's just calling saying, hey, we had a breakthrough. And
that's awesome.
for their perspective. But yeah, really what Steelhead is at the highest view, it's a software ecosystem where your whole plant lives and breathes, almost like the veins in your body, kind of feeding each work center and recording information from each work center. So each area of the plant or each person in the plant can be the most productive as possible. And now that will start with quoting. So if you're ever going after commercial work, or if you're ever working with, higher consumer level jobs, quoting efficiently and accurately is, I would say, paramount. Yes. If you ever quote a job low,
yeah, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble, especially if it's a big job. But if you ever quote, you know this better than I do. And if you quote a job high, like too high, well, you might miss out on a great customer, right? So quoting accuracy is key, quick and accurate. We typically target 2-hour quote turnaround time. And then also, when you're looking to scale, what's pretty helpful is, like, if Dan, you have up in your head, like, hey, roughly these parameters or roughly this type of business, we're going to use this formula to come to this price. And then you can hire like an entry level, someone just out of high school, and they can run your system. So you can go focus on other areas of growing the business, maybe talking to the bank, or, looking at where do we expand, where do we contract, etc.
Yep. Can you dig into how the quoting works a little bit better? Like, so I like to ask all the people that are on here that are powder coaters, like, how do you quote jobs? Where do you get numbers? And if you look at their face the minute I ask it, they're all like, oh God, I wish you didn't. Because it's the hardest thing to do in this business. Yep. Unless you've like spent tons of time running your numbers with your overhead, your employee costs, and all that kind of stuff. So how does Steelhead help the coder price out jobs quickly and efficiently?
Yeah, great question. And we can come back to the rest of what Steelhead does later. Yeah. But it does start I'd say, like,
I think you could sell almost every powder coater if you can fix that problem and actually make it so that it's easy to do and they actually know they're making money when they quote these jobs.
Right. It's tricky.
The number one asked question in group forums and stuff too. It's like,
I see that all the time.
How much?
So, and it's a great question. And we always work with our customers. It's not like, hey, Dean from Steelhead is saying, thou shalt, do X amount of dollars per square foot. Right. But how I look at it is, and this is just my perspective. So if you ever talk to someone like trading stocks, they'll say, these opinions are not the opinions of the company.
Right.
But my opinion is, and I think largely what we believe is, your company can only process so much work per day.
Correct. Yep.
And if you're running an automated line, it's very easy because you have, feet per minute and hooks per minute. And then it's like, okay, we need to make $8,000 off this line per day. That's, $1,000 per hour. how many hooks, 8 feet per minute, and that's super easy.
Yeah.
Batch processing is harder.
Yes.
It's just flat out harder. But how I would view it is you can still treat it like a river of parts. Our name is Steelhead, so Steelhead's actually a fish, so the river kind of makes sense. But say you have like you pick one area of your plant, and we'll just say for simplicity, you have one batch booth, one oven, and maybe the target for your company is, do you mind sharing what an average like operating cost is, or like a target revenue per day? We can just say $1,000, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe $800.
Yeah.
And now we'll say we only run one shift here at Right Now Powder Coating.
Right.
So I would say we work backwards from our target revenue and say we're looking to get $800 per day. It's 8 hours, so it's $100 per hour. And now how many racks can I process through the paint booth or through the oven in 1 hour? And if it's a large rack, maybe it's 4. You can get 4 in a booth, right? And from there, it's like, okay, we need $25 per rack, right? Just categorically. And now start there as a starting point. Now you have, and from there it kind of gets, forever more complex, because sometimes you'll do blasting, and sometimes you'll do a primer, and sometimes you'll do a finicky customer has an inspection that they reject a higher amount of parts. But I would always start with just like the flow of parts, and then back into, I love pricing off parts per rack, personally, because like if it's one part on a rack or 100 parts on a rack, now it gets a little more complex there, because if you do have 100 parts on a rack, the labor time to rack it,
hang and everything,
needs to be captured.
Right.
So it gets to be a fairly complex formula. But yeah, I think the showstopper for me is parts per rack.
Yeah. And are you guys working directly with that coder then when they buy your system, and you're sitting there you're like, hey, here's the numbers we're going to use for this based on what data they give you. Like, our overhead's this, we want a profit margin of this. And then you guys are going to sit there and help them get all that entered in there, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a very consultative approach in terms of we understand their business. We know what's possible in our software, and our deployment engineer is the one sewing it all together. But we don't actually change it too much on day one, because we don't want it to be like disruptive to the current flow.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of times what we'll do is say, hey, Dan, or what is your formula today? Currently going off price per square foot. And really what they're doing is taking square footage and trying to map that to a rack, and then map that to time, right? Because at the end of the day, we're just selling time, and we're trying to use simple inputs on quoting to predict time in each work center. And if it needs masking, or if it needs, blasting, well, then that's additional time that we're selling. So that's really what we're trying to correlate. And we're not going to necessarily just change it categorically on day one. But what we will do is, once we quote a job and it runs through production, we do track the time in each work center to say, hey, we predicted 5 minutes of masking, 10 minutes of racking, this much blasting, this much painting, and it didn't take this. For whatever reason, we often see masking time and packaging time get grossly under predicted. And that's really where I think the highest variance is. And if just a general caution to a lot of people is like, hey, that's if you need special packaging, make sure it's getting priced in.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think a lot of people, we created, it sounds very similar, but way dumbed down, because I'm not that good with software and stuff. And I created an Excel sheet that's very much that same thing. It's basically all the processes that we would go through, whether it's pre-cleaning a part before blasting, racking, taping, phosphating, like everything you would do to get a part out the door. And you can enter the times in there, and then the spreadsheet just takes whatever hourly rate you have it at, and breaks it down into the cost. So
it's perfect.
So it's not as it's probably not as sophisticated as yours, and we're not tracking data. I think that's key, is you start pulling those data points off of what it took someone to process that part. Like, we estimated this, but this is where we're really at. And that's where your software would really shine, to be able to lock you in. So the more you do of that kind of work, you can get a better actual estimate on it.
Precisely. Yeah, the feedback. So a quote is like a prediction, right? We're going to predict this job takes this much time in each area. Then we run it, and then we say, hey, just like we predicted the weather, and then we're off, right? We thought it'd be sunny. It was cloudy. We're going to adjust so it's sunny next time.
I thought that was something very important to get into, because people really struggle with the quoting process. So anything to make that easier would be so worth it. So I don't know if you have anything more to add to that, but if you want to kind of,
yeah. So on the quoting side, specifically, when you're saying, hey, this is going to take 20 minutes in painting, the only reason why Dan can make that prediction is because you have so much experience in powder coating.
Right.
Where we try to set up our software to be, for lack of a better word, like dummy proof, right? Where we can take someone with not Dan's level of experience, because Dan Fitzpatrick's aren't just walking down the road saying, hey, can you hire me, right? Or it takes a lot of time to get someone to be trained into your level. So we're trying to take like the parameters from the job, like, surface area, length, width, parts per rack. It's easier for a new hire to say, I can get probably 5 of those parts on a rack. Or it's roughly, this much surface area, and then take that input to go spit out a price. So that's the reason why what you do works. But we're trying to get like one layer deeper or simpler for our customers, because it's got to be, I would say everyone would agree, like a digital system is a good idea, but it's got to be so easy to use. Otherwise, it doesn't get used properly. So that's just
if it's complicated, the employees just won't even want to mess with it.
Right. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you want to go on to what else, I mean, obviously there's so much more than just the quoting aspect. I just knew people would want to hear more about that, but
yeah. So the quoting feeds into the rest of the company. So we never want to, I guess our philosophy, if you look at every software company in the world, they'll say, streamline your business with XYZ software. And it's such a cliche. It's almost like nails on a chalkboard, right? Like, what does that actually mean? Streamline your business, right? Like, I hate, if I ever type it, just, I cringe myself. If I put it in,
we won't see that in any of your marketing material.
Hopefully not. And if you do, send it to me and we'll get it adjusted. But yeah, so like that is like, but it is truly what we're doing. So what we often see is there's a lot of redundant data entry in the business. So if I quote a job, do you do any commercial work, Dan, today?
Yeah. We have a conveyor system. So we do, that's probably 75, 80% of our business is all commercial work.
Awesome. So if you quote a job today, what you might be doing is putting in those times specifically in Excel, and it spits out a price. And then you'll create it over and put it into Outlook and shoot it off to the customer. And then eventually the customer is going to say, good or bad. And then you might mark it as good or bad based on, if you're tracking that sales win rate data. But then you'll have to re-enter it to some degree into your system. Order entry, put in the part parameters, color, treatment, masking, blasting, packaging, and then push it to the floor. Right, print out a piece of paper and bring it to the floor. Well, now you just put it into Excel, you put it into Word, you put it into the ERP. That's 3 times you entered that part or that job data. And that's expensive, right? Because if you look at your P&L, or I guess for all of our customers, when they look at their P&L, the number one item is their payroll. So if you're going and re-entering data, 1, 2, 3 times just to get order into the system, and then some folks, their ERP doesn't sync to their QuickBooks, so they re-enter it a 4th time to get it into their accounting system, and that's expensive because as you guys grow, what you'll find is the orders per day scales.
So does Steelhead link to QuickBooks?
Correct.
Oh, it does. Okay. I didn't know. That was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because a lot of us use QuickBooks. I know I do personally. So for that to link would have been a big, like, I don't even want to mess with it because I still have to enter the invoice over here.
Yeah. So customer number 1 said, hey, plug this thing into QuickBooks. So we had to build that one early.
That's awesome. I think that's a great feature.
Yeah, it is great. And it just reduces the double data entry. So if you redo some data entry, what you find is it costs time, and time is money. It's the most expensive thing you'll purchase for your company is people's time. And then the second thing is it increases the chance for errors, right? So if you're redoing, I think there's a study from Harvard that even like the most normal people out there, if you're just doing manual data entry, there's like a 3% fallout rate. In terms of you'll make mistakes 3% of the time. So, save time and improve accuracy just by reusing your quote for order entry, then reusing that for production, then reusing it for scheduling, for capacity planning, and then also for invoicing. So we can reuse a piece of data, 6 times across the plant. And what we typically find is that when a part goes from door to door, I mean, we see sometimes 9 people touching a job from receiving to order entry to maybe someone scheduling or dragging and dropping or prioritizing a job, and then, racking, masking, or some sort of wash. And on a conveyorized system, maybe you have a few people touching it in terms of painting it or priming it, and then, inspecting or packaging and shipping. So a lot of people are touching a job, and the smoother we can hand that task from job person to person, the more efficient the company is.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that is kind of like when we say streamlining, we are pretty much saying never re-enter a piece of data, a part number, a price, a treatment, a process step, or re-enter it into your invoicing system.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's awesome that it all links up like that. I guess I don't remember if I had talked to you guys about that originally, but that does make a big difference to guys. And especially, I'm sure you see it a lot more with big shops. I know we're getting to the point where with 4 employees, it's harder to, it used to all just be in my head, customer would drop off a part. I knew what color it was going. I knew what we had to mask and what we had to tape off or plug and all that kind of stuff. Or if we need to blast it, if we were priming it, it was all up here. And so the employees would constantly become, what are we doing with this? What are we doing with this? So I just felt like I was I was going over the details over and over again. So I'm sure with bigger plants, you typically have, the work order printed out and stuff, but you've got the person who typed it up and then, the person who had talked with the customer to get all those details to begin with, whereas you could streamline that pretty quickly and everyone could be on the same page just by looking at the software.
Yeah. Yeah. When someone says, runs to Dan and say, hey, what do I do next? Or what do I do with this part? From our perspective, it's like, it can't happen. Right. And it's almost like, just somebody, I don't know what would be the most like cardinal sin that you could do right now, powder coating. Like maybe spray painting over just rusty parts and not blasting them, right? Like that would be like, you'd be like, oh, this is just repulsive.
Yeah.
And from our perspective, yeah, that is repulsive to take Dan's time. So we often track efficiencies, right? In terms of you're paying someone for 40 hours of work and how much time are they on the trigger? Because everything else is waste, right? If they're running around looking for parts, looking for paperwork, looking for Dan, it's a complete wasted payroll time.
Right.
And when we often find many times here in Minnesota, you're in Iowa, right?
Yep.
So here in Minnesota, just a little north of you, we've had people with they have like billable labor, like labor in the booth, and then they have payroll time, and it's about 50% for some operators. Like 50% of the time, they're wasting just looking for what to do, when to do it, how to do it. Where's the parts, where's the paperwork, and for us, that's a nightmare because if you look at what you're spending in a month or a year, it's crazy amounts. But then over time, as they get better and better and better, well, we actually seen that go up to like north of 95% utilization.
How has employee feedback? So when you've integrated your system into a shop and then they've been using it for 6 months or so, are number one, are the production employees welcoming to it? Because a lot of employees don't like change. They don't want to have to do an extra. Before it was like, oh, I can go find Dan, talk to him in his office for 15 minutes, kill a little time. I see that a lot. But now they're going to be in the shop and they're going to be like, oh, it's all right here. Because I think, and you can walk through your guys what you use, but I think you have like tablets and stuff at the stations typically. But what feedback are you getting from the actual people doing the labor? Are they happy with it? Are they upset because they're like, I'm working more than I've ever worked? Or like, what are you hearing on that end?
Yeah, I would be. It's mixed feedback. So there's some people that are just hate change, right? No matter what it is. If it's the iPhone, they're going to be the last to adopt it. If it's going to be the internet on their phone, they're the last to adopt it. And there's also always the early adopters. So it's a mixed bag. I would say typically the best or the worst outcomes come from the leadership team in terms of just communicating the change. And I've had people say like, hey, Dean, you have to go sell this to every one of my employees and get them to buy in before we proceed forward, because we don't want to push it on our operators. We want them to pull for it, right?
Right.
And typically, I'd say the biggest change from the operators is that there's now production data where there wasn't production data. So, and the easiest way to communicate that to the operator is like, hey, we have part numbers in here or jobs in here that we're going to pay you to do, and then they're going to lose us money. So you'll work 8 hours and lose right now powder coating money. So we'll be worse off as a company because you came into work today and did your job. So we need this production data to ensure that we always hit our target margin. And if we always hit our target margin of 20 to 25% net, when all the dust settles, we can afford to grow the company. And if we afford to grow the company, well, the rising tide lifts all the boats, right? Because now we can get more hours, better equipment, more surface area, or more square footage, and afford to pay everybody. But there's always going to be some people that are resistant and need a little more handholding, and that's why we have such a strong deployment approach. So for every deployment, we come on site and talk and kind of handhold everybody, because we have a lot of our operators are. There's one in Iowa, actually, a powder coater that they have an employee from like a remote island in Hawaii, and he doesn't speak English, doesn't speak Spanish, doesn't, right? So it's like hard, like you just need to hold them. Here's where you click, move the part into your booth, move the part out of your booth, that's your job, right? Move it in, move it out, see how to do it, see when to do it, and then move down to the next stream person to alert them to do their job. So I would say in general, it's 2 clicks for the operator. So it actually is the easiest. The operator is the easiest person in the production environment. I would say quoting's more complex because, there's just more things to consider, time in each area, essentially. The operator is the easiest, but there is also mixed feedback on the adoption. Now, the best operators are the ones that recognize, like, hey, this is how I can actually separate myself from everybody else.
Yeah.
Because you can now track rework per operator, and you can now track production throughput per operator. And now some of these people say, hey, I've been, busting my tail for Dan for 6 months, and he never notices that I'm working harder than everybody else in this company. And now what we see great results from is saying, like, hey, we'll just say
the data's there,
the data's there to say, hey, Billy and Susie, great work this month. You guys crushed it, right? Here's a little pat on the back, a gift card, a little promotion. Now you're a lead operator, and then they have incentive, and everyone else sees, like, hey, if I'm just like Billy and Susie, I will soon be promoted too. So I'm going to go that extra mile and do that extra, X, Y, Z, so Dan can see that I'm just also crushing it, right? Yeah. So it's almost an incentive structure for the entire team to pull harder than they've ever pulled before, because it's being monitored. And I think there's the old saying, what you inspect, people respect. So whatever the target is, from a throughput, from a quality, from a lead time perspective, it's now available for all to see and for all to help improve.
Yep. Are any of your end users, and I'm sure they are, but they're having team meetings with your data, and they're like, I assume they do this all the time, actually, like, here's where our output is compared to where it was and all that. Is that you're getting like monthly stats on all that kind of stuff? I assume that they're able to then share with their team so that they can use it as a motivator, or if they have a bonus program, hey, if we hit this number next month, we can hit our bonus or whatever. I assume there's that built in.
Yeah. And I think that transparency is, myself, I'm not I would say I'm not like the most experienced manager. Honestly, quite new to any sort of, my first time ever managing someone was in the last couple of years, right? And one thing I found extremely hard to do myself is manage somebody without data. And if you say, hey, Billy versus Bobby, I just feel like you're not cutting it, right? And we need to, as a company, if we want to survive and grow over the next 50 years and take over the US and Canada, here's what we need to do, working backwards. Here's our quarter target. Here's our year target. We want to get, 50 new, right now, powder coatings in the next 2 months, right? To achieve our manifest destiny. And now here's our plan to get it, right? And then if we're missing high or missing low, congratulate or coach them accordingly.
Right.
And it's impossible to do without data, or I don't see how you would ever do it without data. And that's one thing we do work with companies. Our biggest company has around 200 employees, and our smallest has around 3 employees. And I'll say that's one thing that the big companies do extremely well, is they realize the power of the data and leverage data more than the smaller companies do.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
But yeah, it is naturally part of the software. All that analytics is already pre-built. We actually have native reports about, WIP, throughput, on-time delivery, all the key, I'd say, performance indicators of a plant. And then you guys can set goals, or our customers can set goals like, hey, here's our targets, right? And we're going to, for next month, we're going to try to improve our scrap rate or on-time delivery by, X%. And then the team can all see it too. So like, it's not like, Dan's coming on from high and saying, cracking the whip and saying, we need to be better. It's like, here's the report saying we need to be better. And now we're all on the same side of the table, pulling upstream to go as fast as possible, because if the team's aligned, it can be extremely powerful.
Right. Yep. I agree. Can you give us a general view of like, so we've got you in the shop now and you're setting it up. What's it look like for the end user as they're using the software?
Yeah, it's a great question. So physically, what we have is typically, you can use a cell phone, like an iPhone. Some people have iPhones. Honestly, any device that's connected to the internet is a device that's on Steelhead. So if you go to our website, we'll have some videos of or pictures of people using it in various capacities. But most typically, what it is a receiving tablet. You can get like an iPad tablet for, I think, $200, $250 off Amazon that a lot of our folks use. And the receiving dock will have one. So when the parts come in or get dropped off, they'll snap a picture and snap it into the system. Now we have a picture identifying, hey, these parts came in today and they're for XYZ customer if it's labeled with a pack slip. And then it gets entered into the system. In the office, typically it's like a computer, right? Laptop, whatever. And then as the parts flow through, we'll say blasting or masking or racking, each key area will have a tablet as well. So the tablet has two main areas. It's like the to-do list and then the in-process list. So say I'm a blaster and I see, here's my to-do list from Dan. So if Dan's, a customer calls and says, hey, I need this tomorrow, it's now being expedited, you can drag it to the top of your list and it'll go to the top of my list. So I don't need to run and talk to Dan and say, hey, what's the next job for me? I just grab the top one and I can see a picture of, hey, here's the part that needs to be blasted. Here's the type of blasting that we're doing. And then once I move it into my booth, and it'll start a timer, it'll track my time, and then I move it out of my booth. And if it's done with blasting, it's going to go to either masking or racking or whatever the next step is. So it'll pop up on the next guy's or gal's to-do list in terms of, hey, now this job is ready for racking. And ideally, that's how it flows through the entire platform, is if Dan quoted blasting or if Dan quoted masking or Dan quoted packaging, those steps will auto-populate into the work order. And then everybody gets notified like, hey, this job is ready for me to do next. And then they see a picture of how to do it. And then they run it through and it tracks their time or their materials like their powder. And then it alerts the next guy, hey, now this job is ready for you. So it's a tablet in each key work center.
Do a lot of the employees then each have their own tablet, or they're just at the work site? So one would be like at the booth, one would be at the blast room, one would be at the oven per se.
Yep, one per work center. So if so, say you and I are both blasting, and maybe there's two booths or one booth, we could each have our own like list essentially, and I would just log in with my PIN in the top right corner, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then that's how, when I move my parts out, I would get like credit for like, hey, this is a job I did, and then you get credit for a job you did.
Okay. So you can share they'll just go to whichever tablets at whatever destination and enter their info. So
yep.
But they don't have. Is there any way, like, I'm just trying to think, like, so what we do is very manual, but we have a board where all their jobs are listed and their names are attached to it. But to me, if you were going to do that with your software, each one of them would have to have it on their cell phone to like know what's next on their to-do list. Is there anything like that, or it's just job specified as it goes through the plant?
Yep, we can tag jobs per person too. So some of our companies say like, hey, this person is better at, heavy jobs or finicky jobs or, quality, finicky, so there's different jobs that are kind of better for certain personnel. So we have tags in our software. So you can say this is a heavy job is going to get tagged for Frank. This is a precise masking job. It's going to get tagged for Sally. Typically, based on your expertise or your team's experience or your staff's experience, you can tag jobs to be, and you can filter based on your tag. So I could see only Dean's jobs, and you'd see only Dan's jobs, and we're not,
So when they sign in, they can see like what's been assigned to them then.
Correct.
Yeah. Correct. That's kind of where I was going with it. To me, it's because I've been in big plants. I used to sell powder coating equipment for a company called AIC. Awesome. So I've seen the shops where it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 70, employees, and they all kind of have their own station and they just work the part as it goes through their station, whatever it may be. Whereas when you're in a smaller shop like mine with 4 employees, we kind of all do everything and we rotate through different positions. So that's where I was like, if we can't, it'd be difficult if it's like, okay, well, this part popped up to be blasted, but this person can't even lift it up. So we got to get someone else in here, that sort of thing. That's why I ask. Yep, I'm sure you see that the shops are just ran totally different when you have the bigger, more, I don't know how to word it, but structured places where something like where all the info's in my head and not on the tablet. So.
Yeah, there are differences in the segments of the businesses. I would say people on your side of the table, Dan, typically overestimate the differences. Yeah. They're actually not so different. At the very core, you're receiving parts in, you're applying a coating to some level of a specification, either from Cardinal or from Diamond Vogel, and then you're shipping them back out, maybe doing some level of inspection. But it's parts in, apply coating, do a processing, ship the parts back out. And then the bigger companies just have more of them, right? More jobs, more parts, more problems. But everybody has actually the same problems. So when you say, hey, we want specification based on person, they may say, we have too many people. We need specification based on weight. So we're going to take it heavy part, light part, where you're going to take it, Frankie or Bobby.
Right.
So
just who you're applying it to, yeah.
Who you're applying it. Similar,
or what you're applying to, yeah.
Yeah, so similar problems, but just slightly different solutions.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've seen it all because you've worked with small and big. Are you guys, was it how many total years open now?
Essentially 3 years total, but
3 years total.
2 years selling it. Yeah.
Okay. Because I know I've seen you guys popping up all over the place. You're going to Powder Coating Week this week, which I haven't gone to yet. I need to get out there. I was going to try and get a table myself for the electron powder coating guns that I sell, but I just didn't get it to work out. Plus it's spring break for me and the family. So we're going to be down there relaxing and not working.
Are you in Orlando?
We'll be in Orlando one day, but we're actually in Anna Maria Island. So it's not too far. It's a few hours, I think, away. And I thought about coming up for a day, but I don't know if I have the time to do it or not with the family. So, but right. No. Have you been to the show before? With Steelhead?
I haven't been. We went last year for the first time. I was not at that show, but it is I mean, especially as we focus on getting into all the small shops in America. I mean, that's the spot, right? That is it's like the Super Bowl. I think that show is specifically for custom coaters, and they're all going to be a little bit smaller from what I've seen just in the past. Mm-hmm. Well, Dan, I know family comes first, right? Like if you're, vacations are probably a rarity in this industry a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
So if you do get a chance, you can swing by our booth and shake some hands. It's cool to meet the people. Yeah, especially we meet a lot of people through Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff, and to meet them in person is pretty neat. Do you have plans? Were you at Fabtech last year? Yeah. Okay. Did you had a booth? We had a booth in the finishing and coating area of Fabtech. Yep. It's not our primary. We're not really focused on just like fabrication at large, right? Like some of our coaters do some assemblies, and some do some like light fabrication. Mm-hmm. So we are kind of getting pulled into that field as well, but it's not like our bread and butter. Our bread and butter is the powder coater. I'd say if you look at our customers, I mean, some will do powder coating and liquid painting, or powder coating and e-coating. Yep. But I'd say over 50%, maybe 75% are doing powder coating. Yeah. Yeah. We were at that show with Electron too. I guess I didn't get to walk around as much as I would have liked to, but like I think you said earlier that you guys kind of focused more on the powder coating industry, which was kind of neglected. And that's exactly how I feel when we're at Fabtech, because we're always off in the corner and we're neglected. Will you guys be going to Orlando this year in October? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll definitely meet up there because I'll be out there for that again. For Perfect. Sure.
Yeah.
And then I think we're doing a Fabtech Canada as well. We haven't done the Fabtech Canada one, but are you doing that for Electron?
I won't be up there. No, I think they have a different distributor up in Canada. So it's me and 2 other distributors in America, and then I think they have 1 or 2 up in Canada. So I don't know if they'll be I don't think. I actually don't think Electron as a corporation has gone up to Canada yet. I know they're pretty big down in Mexico, so they go to Fabtech in Mexico, I believe. But they've only been in the U.S. market pushing it for the last year and a half or so, and they actually found me off my YouTube channel too. So
yeah, they just I never heard of them. I only heard of them through you, actually. That's how
I think they'll be taking over the market, kind of like you guys will be. Up and coming type thing, and it's powder coating is still relatively unknown in America. I can't tell you how many people are like, "What do you do for work?" And I'm like, "Oh, I have a powder coating shop." And they're like, "What's that?" Like people have no idea what it is. So it's still rather new.
People tell us the same thing. They're like, "Oh, you guys build software for powder coaters? Like, when are you going to move on past the pond of powder coaters?"
Right.
And for us, it's like, no, this is. Don't tell anybody. But this is the one secret that's allowed us to be so successful, is that everybody else did pass them by.
Right.
And being that we focus on them, now we can become the best software in the world for powder coaters, because there's not so much competition. Where obviously our goal is to be like the QuickBooks for powder coating ERP softwares. And that is something that's not easy to pull off, right? But we're working our tails off to do it.
Did you guys have, you talked about like how you started talking with a customer, but before you started dealing with that customer who had all these issues, did anyone in the company have background working in a powder coating facility or any experience at all in that realm?
No, I mean, we're in manufacturing plants a lot. I was a mechanical engineer and then worked at General Motors, and kind of you get exposed to a lot of manufacturing. But no one actually sprayed on the gun before, ever. We have friends that were in the industry. So Wildwood Coating, the reason why they bought into this dream it was just a dream, right? Because nothing existed. Is because we knew them our developers, Brent and Mark and Keith Arkowski, they're all in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And they knew these guys. So they just talked to them and said, "Hey, have you seen any software that's great for powder coating?" They're like, "No." "Well, if we build it, would you try it?" And they're like, "Absolutely." So we've just spent a lot of time focusing on, and you mentioned earlier, like, how do the operators like it? Well, we built this thing on the shop floor. So it was built first for the operator, and then second and kind of our view is the operators are the one coating the parts.
Right.
And everything else, like, your customers are paying for the powder to be on the parts and be cured properly, and everything else, they don't give a crap about your front office work, right? That's non-value add, and everything in the shop is value add. So when we built the software, it's like we're in the shop first and making the shop easy and intuitive, so everyone knows what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and then everything else is secondary. Quite honestly, if you can get away with nobody in the office, that's going to be the best way for you guys to grow your business, right? So we want to be like plant floor first, everything else second, and that's where we started. So that experience, I'd say that availability to have people that are willing to test it, that's how we've grown so fast, is people being willing to say, like, "Hey, there's got to be a better way. Maybe it is Steelhead. I'll try it out." And then it worked out.
Yeah, I know when we first talked, and we did a demo, like a live demo, Zoom, whatever. I was very impressed with the whole system, and I was super excited about it. But it's like, man, I think I had maybe 2 employees at that time, and it's like, this is something I want to get to one day. It just wasn't affordable for me at that time. And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head when you mentioned, like, you found your sweet spot to get the business rolling was at like 10 to 20 people type of deal. But like I said earlier, to any of you custom coders that are watching that are smaller, they are testing a program, correct? For a smaller shop, which I think, if the price point's where it's at, which I think I remember from the email, I think that will be a very big value added system to put into most little shops. So I think if that all works out and you guys can do it for that cost, I think it's going to be a great asset to any powder coater who's bringing in jobs. I mean, constantly. So I'm excited about it. Do you want to share anything else about that at all? Because I'm going to guarantee that the majority of people watching my channel are smaller guys.
Yeah. So this is our, and it's kind of like the reason why the price point was higher before. So just for complete transparency for everybody watching, our minimum price for Steelhead was $1,500 per month a year ago. And what we realized is like for Steelhead to be successful, we need to take an engineer, put him on site at Right Now Powder Coating for 1 week to 2 weeks, learn everything about his business, and then build it, and then train everybody, and then get it up and running. And engineers are expensive, and time is expensive, right? And so if we charge a minimum price of $1,500 per month, that's a way we can be profitable and actually help. Right. And we've had some customers that have had phenomenal success stories of, hey, now we realize these parts are profitable, these parts are terribly profitable, tweaking the pricing, tweaking the operations, tweaking the team to make the company be worth, like, quite honestly, 3x of what they were worth before, because it went from like 5% net margin to 25% net margin, and that's explosive for the valuation of the company. But as we got better and better in our video training and our documentation, and we're actually coming out with a Steelhead University to take that training and kind of automate the training of Steelhead, so you can kind of learn on your own. And as we make all these tweaks, it's like, okay, now we can bring our price down again, down again. Yeah, so we're testing right now a $500 a month price point, and that if that works, we'll even go lower. So as far as like a minimum price, and the whole reason for that is, A, we have to stay in business, but B, we want to be affordable for everybody, like truly like the QuickBooks of powder coating ERPs. And if we can go as low as we can, we will go as down to $100 a month. We will do that. And really, kind of the idea is, some people build their own booths and some people buy the booth, right? And ideally, we can sell the pre-built or sell the assembly, and have Dan Fitzpatrick say, hey, I want to go with A or B because I want to work on a Saturday and build my own booth, or I want to have an engineer come on site and just build the whole thing for me.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe it's just like if you got, I saw on your previous podcast, you change your own brakes, right? And you could make the business decision and say, I'm going to be spraying parts because I can make $100 or $150 an hour spraying parts, and I'm going to pay somebody else $60 an hour to do my brakes.
I do my brakes because I like working on my cars.
All right.
But I definitely agree with what you're saying. The longer I've been in business, I remember like all the advice I would get when I was smaller and not making money, and you're just scrapping to get by month to month. And I'm like, I did everything. I mean, there's not a thing I didn't do. I ran electrical, we did build half of our booth, that sort of thing. So you did everything you could to save that money just to keep your business open. But then everyone's like, oh, your time's worth so much. If you would just focus on the things that make you money instead of trying to save money, you'll explode and it'll grow so much faster. And I think that once you start doing that and you're like, okay, I'm going to hire that out. I'm going to hire that out. That frees me up to, work on the business instead of in it, and that's kind of where I'm at now, which is, it's so weird to like just not be in the shop 24/7, standing over their shoulders, doing that. But now I can try and bring in new work and work on expanding. And I think that's, you nailed like that. That's the perfect example of what your software can do for somebody. Is it takes them out from having to re-enter it 40 times, and how many hours a week were they doing that? And, but yeah, by giving two options is kind of what you were getting into. Like you can build the infrastructure a little bit more on your own after going through the training, or if you want to spend more, you can have someone come out and do hands-on, like walk through your plan. So I think, there's definitely people that are like, I don't want to mess with it. I just want a plug and play system where I can just, go live right away and enter parts and get it moving. But yeah, I'd probably be the guy that's like, I want to see how this thing works. So I want to know every little facet or facet of it.
So we're working towards that. Right now, we're just doing a brake service. Hey, bring it in. We'll swap them in a weekend. And we're working towards like that self-serve side. And right now we're kind of in the hybrid area with that $500 a month, where typically we're looking to like a shop, like Right Now Powder Coating, for example, 4 people. If you said, hey, I want to go Monday morning, we could have you up and running by Friday in terms of inside of Steelhead. And it would be, right now, $500 a month. If we can lower that price, we will lower the price. So if we're going to work our way down to like that self-serve, here's the brake pads, here's the brakes, here's the YouTube, instructions, and let it go. It's pretty easy. Right. And we're only going to do that if we're confident that you'll be successful doing your own brakes.
Yeah, you don't want to set them up for failure and then have them mad at you, and you're like, oh, you sold me a crappy system, and it's like, well, you didn't set it up right. But
now they're on the Facebook pages saying, hey, these Steelhead guys are.
People are mean too on those Facebook pages. I don't even read half my comments because I've been powder coating for 8 years, and I say it all the time. There's so much better people. I mean, there's the guy Roro Designs. I guarantee he could smoke me on any challenge. Like if we were to do a paint off or something on parts, and it's like, the only difference is I was willing to put myself out there and let those people be mean to me on Facebook and YouTube and all that sort of thing. So, well, I don't know. Do you have anything else to add? We're kind of approaching an hour about the software, or anything you want to share with anybody. I'm excited about that new one. I'm going to probably have to reach out to you guys because we're getting to the point where we're going to need something like that. And I definitely feel like there's going to be so much value added in using it, just being able to look at all your data. Like you said before, if you can't track it, you can't change it, you can't work on it. So if you don't know something, and I tell people that with budgets, because I'm a big budget guy, I like to look at numbers. If you aren't tracking what you're spending, you're never going to know where you're overspending or where you could save at. So
yeah, I'll just say one thing to end it off. From my perspective, I have the utmost respect for you guys, right? In terms of, I would say the American dream is the powder coaters. It is the job shops. It is the custom coaters. And in a way of, I think that after my road here at Steelhead is done, I'm going to go try to buy my own thing and do what you guys are doing. And from my perspective, how I see it in the most cliche way possible is like, you guys are living the American dream, right? You started from nothing. Typically, most of our customers are starting from nothing, and they're looking to make it, right? Just make a better life for themselves, make a better life. Like we had a customer say, it's not all about the money. I'm now home on Saturdays. I was doing my invoices on Saturdays, and now I'm home with my wife and kids. So like, it's like a life-changing, right? Just because everything's easier, and invoice is easier now. So from my perspective, I would say to our customers and our prospective customers that you are indeed living the American dream, and Steelhead just helps you realize it.
Yeah.
Because one of our guys was saying recently, he's like, I wasn't living the American dream. This is the American nightmare, right? Where it's nights, it's weekends, it's like hard work. And for that, I have the utmost respect, and our team has the utmost respect for those people. And then lastly, I'll just say, from what we've seen with our customers, the ones that really make it efficiently are doing a couple things. They're tracking their margins, and they are tracking their delivery times. So adding an option to do a next day expedite for 50% upcharge is an insane revenue generating event. And because typically the margin's like 10%, right? 15%. And it's pretty hard to grow on that margin. But if you can turn things next day and charge a high price point, if you're looking to scale, I haven't seen anyone really scale with like the consumer work. Typically the commercial work is what kind of fuels, if that is your trajectory. Not every custom coder wants to grow, right? But if that is your desire, I would say the commercial work and offering next day expedites and tracking your margins, that's the 1-2-3 punch, whether it's with Steelhead or with some other system.
I'm not sure there's another system for powder coaters out there. I mean, I think you could maybe try and tweak something, but you guys are taking it to a whole new level by customizing it for everyone. So I don't think there's a system out there that could beat what you guys are doing for the coder. So
thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate you coming on. We're gonna put a bunch of links down below. I haven't even asked you for them yet, but any of your social media and all that kind of stuff, your website, we'll link down in the comments. And go check them out. I believe you guys still do, if you're interested in buying the product, you guys do live chats and go through and demo the program and everything, correct?
Yep, we'll give you a little ability to test drive it. And we do actually have a mini powder coating plants here in Minnesota, as well as in Detroit. So if you want to come up, we can fly you out and run you through.
Where are you at in Minnesota?
West of Minneapolis, like 15 minutes, Maple Plain, Minnesota.
Okay, so I lived in Plymouth for a little bit, so I know.
Oh, really?
And we just sold some Electron unit up to a company up there. I'm not going to say their name, but
we'll have to chat offline. Yeah,
there's a big powder coating company up there.
Okay.
So again, thank you for coming on. Check out his links down below. If you guys are going to powder coating week, this will actually air that week. So stop out, tell him you saw his interview, and I'm sure they got pins or something on their table or candy you can take. Right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We actually have some promotion, I think, as well, for like a discounted, I forget the discount. But if you sign up at Powder Coating Week, there's some level of promotion.
Yep, I saw that too. Yeah. So go check them out, email them, get a demo going. Any size powder coating shop, because I know there's some guys that get boxes and boxes of stuff like custom motorcycle parts and wheels and car parts and stuff. And it's so hard to keep track of that sometimes. I think your system would be awesome for that, even for the one-man shop. So again, Dean, thank you for joining. And as always, guys, give us a thumbs up on the video. Make sure to subscribe, and we will see you on the next one.
All righty. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for your time. Fair to meet you.